We have joined together during this Memorial Day ceremony for the opportunity to celebrate and honor the many men and women of our military who died while protecting our nation. As we take this day to give thanks and quietly contemplate their ultimate sacrifice, we realize how markedly inadequate our attempt to pay tribute to them really is. There are no words that can properly reflect the magnitude of what their sacrifice has meant to our nation and the amount of love, respect, and honor that we hold deep in our hearts for them. Our intent today is not to speak on the glory of battle or to pay homage to heroes or icons, but rather to reflect on the person behind the deed and remember all of our fallen comrades for who they actually were. People just like us. They were our fathers, brothers, sisters, sons and daughters, and our friends, all of whom held true to the values upon which this great land was founded and shared a common belief in freedom, justice, and liberty. And keep their memory alive. We must remember and reflect on the lives they left behind, the next door neighbors, and the kids who lived down the block. They were the high school quarterbacks, cheerleaders, and class clowns. Some of them were teachers, police officers, firefighters, plumbers, and physicians. They were of every race, creed, and color. They came from every corner of our great nation and from other countries as well. Together, they defended, protected, and advanced the cause of freedom. They were different in many ways, yet somehow all the same. They were unified in spirit and united in purpose and mission. The men and women who we honor today did not choose the events of the world and the circumstances into which they were thrust. Rather, the circumstances and events of the world chose them. It is a fact of life that freedom is not free. Throughout our nation's history, there has been a heavy cost involved in preserving our way of life. As a nation, we have shouldered the cost, and for the many generations of men and women who fought and died for our freedom's sake, it came not as a burden, but as a duty. Regretfully, the sacrifices of our brothers and sisters in arms are sometimes forgotten or disregarded, especially by those who have gained the most from it. History has proven that the heavy fist of tyranny and terror still tries to shackle many countries that are enjoying relatively recent freedom and democracy, if not for those we honor today. As proud Americans, we do their sacrifice a disservice if we fail to encourage those who take so much for granted to consider what alternatives would be available to them if not for the selfless sacrifice of so many of our comrades. Perhaps it should be mandatory for every citizen of every nation that has benefited from America's valiant efforts on their behalf to tour the final resting places of America's war dead located in Normandy and in other cemeteries in France, Holland, Belgium, Italy, North Africa, the Philippines, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Panama. It is those hallowed and sacred grounds that remain a silent testament to America's commitment to freedom-loving people everywhere. As Colin Powell so eloquently stated, we have gone forth from our shores repeatedly over the last 100 years and put wonderful young men and women at risk, many of whom have lost their lives, and we have asked for nothing in return except for ground to bury them in. Today, as we honor patriots of the past, we are mindful that the last 2 decades have brought forward a new generation of patriots who have been put to the test in the war against terrorism. Like their brothers and sisters who came before them, They were sent thousands of miles away to harsh terrains, leaving behind the comforts of home, jobs, and family. We must continue to remind America and the world that freedom is not free. And there is an unimaginably high cost involved in our effort to liberate persecuted people. It is not just our duty to aid in the liberation, but we must support young nations in their quest for democracy. And we must help heal nations torn apart from war and tyranny. And let's be very clear about it. We must remind the world that the threat of terrorism has not been extinguished, but it has diminished because of the courage, valor, and unity of purpose of the men and women in our military. Today, it is up to us to make sure the legacy of our nation's fallen is passed on from this generation to the next and to all generations beyond. We must ensure that the youth of tomorrow have an awareness and understanding of whom it is they should likewise honor and exactly why they should honor them. As we maintain the memory and the deeds of our fallen throughout the coming years, we must also remember to care for those who return from their service and their wars as well. Serving with equal dedication and valor, they deserve and are entitled to receive adequate and proper medical care and compensation for their wounds, injuries, and illnesses connected to their military service. After the support, the troop rallies, after the welcome home parades, and long after the flag waving has died down, what happens next? Our responsibility and our obligation to our veterans shouldn't end when the last rally is over. Our veterans deserve better than that. The defenders of this nation fulfilled their obligation to us, and it is up to us to honor all of the obligations we owe to them. Protecting and defending America's ideals and values should entitle them a chance to achieve the American dream, one that includes employment, education, and a bright future in which together with their family they can thrive. They deserve not only our gratitude, but deserve to be treated with dignity and respect as well. Haven't they earned it? To do anything less is to betray the memory and the sacrifice of our dead. Let us leave here today knowing that our destiny as a free people is entirely up to us. Let every deed and act of each of our days be guided by the memory of those who gave their lives for our future freedoms. And may their sacrifice continue to inspire us and fill us with hope. And now, Pastor Steve Savides from the First Congregational United Church of Christ of New London will say our opening prayer.
I invite those who wish to join me in prayer. Creator God, it is in a spirit of love and community that we pause on this Memorial Day to remember the lives lost and the lives forever changed. In doing so, may we also remember your great love for us. May we remember that there is no greater demonstration of love than choosing to lay down one's life for another. May we remember that even in the darkest days of war, terror, or sorrow, you promise to sustain us, to give us strength, and to provide us with a deep and abiding peace. In safeguarding the legacy of those who paid the ultimate price, may we become ever more vigilant in our love for others, our nation, and the cause of freedom, justice, and peace throughout the world. For them and for their cause we pray. Amen.
And now, the New London Boy Scouts will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand in the middle. Please take off your headgear and place your hand over your heart as you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And now we will hear the national anthem from the New London High School Band. Great job. Thank you so much. And now the Boy Scouts will lower the flag to half-mast. And now we will hear from our guest speaker, Terry Lathrop.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, and children, and all veterans from all the armed forces with us here today. My name is Terry Lathrop. I am the commander of American Legion Post 263 in New London. I get a little emotional because last 2 weeks we lost our post commander after a brief illness. So I'm in this position because he is gone. So I want to take a moment of silence for Ron Gagno, our past commander. Thank you. I'm a 30-year veteran of the United States Coast Guard. On this Memorial Day, I'm going to speak to you about one specific Coast Guardsman, how he lived, how he died, and how his legacy lives on to this very day. The Iraq War is most often remembered for its ground combat. The insurgency which gripped the country after the fall of Saddam Hussein focused its efforts on the coalition troops who fought to maintain order in the nation. But to Iraq's south, another war was being waged, an insurgency at sea. This war was fought mainly over two oil terminals, Khal al-Amara and al-Basar, both a few miles off the Al-Faw Peninsula in the Persian Gulf. Crude oil made up the vast majority of Iraq's exports and was vital to their economy. Because of this, it was understood from the beginning that these two oil terminals must be protected by coalition forces, as their falling could potentially cause Iraq's economy to grind to a halt, throwing the nation into even further chaos. Iraq's economy, one of the soldiers tasked with protecting these two important locations was U.S. Coast Guard damage controlman Third Class Nathan Bruckenthal. Those who knew him and loved him believed that his heroism stemmed from a family sense of service. This sense of service was instilled in Nate at a very young age. Nathan B. Bruckenthal was born in Stony Brook, New York, the son of Rick Bruckenthal of Northport, New York, and Lori Bullock of Ashburn, Virginia. While growing up, he had also lived in Hawaii, Virginia, and Connecticut. Bruckenthal and his family lived in Ridgefield, Connecticut from 1992 to 1995. He was a volunteer firefighter from 97 to 98. Bruckenthal was a graduate of Ridgefield High School and a member of the Naval Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. He intended to follow his service in the United States Coast Guard, but subsequently going to college and becoming a policeman or a fireman. Bruckenthal joined the U.S. Coast Guard on January 5, 1999. He served on Cutter Point Wells, based out of Montauk, New York, prior to attending Damage Control A School. Once he became a DC-3, he was transferred to Station Nia Bay, Washington, in the northwest corner of Washington on the Mackay Native American Indian Reservation. There, Nathan volunteered as a police officer, firefighter, emergency medical technician, and assistant high school football coach. He was also there at Nia Bay, where he met his wife, Patty Bruckenthal. His decision to extend his enlistment was based on his desire to continue to serve his country, an even more challenging position in the Coast Guard. He was accepted to the Elite Tactical Law Enforcement Program and assigned to Tactical Law Enforcement Team South at Coast Guard Air Station, Miami. This put Bruckenthal on the front lines of the Coast Guard. And based out of Miami, he learned the skills which would eventually bring him to the Persian Gulf. While with TACLET South, Bruckenthal earned a reputation for being an excellent boarding team member. He was recognized as a leader by his commanding officers and received numerous awards for drug extradition operations and alien interdiction. He was in the Caribbean Sea, Eastern Pacific, including the National Defense Service Medal, Coast Guard Meritorious Team Combination, and Global War on Terrorism Medal with Oak Leaf. Because of his unique skills and abilities, he was offered the opportunity of a lifetime and was chosen to be among the first Coast Guardsmen deployed to Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. While there, he received the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal and a Combat Action Ribbon for action in and around the port of Qusar. Operating initially out of Kuwait, Bruckenthal arrived in the area in February 2003. Before the war broke out in March, he was tasked with patrolling the Gulf and conducting safety and security boardings. There, he did boardings on local fishing and commercial vessels. He cross-trained with sailors from various navies from around the world, including New Zealand to Poland. Bruckenthal was conducting one such boarding when the war broke out on the Khar Abdallah River. They were responding to a group of tugs which had claimed their engines had failed, leaving them stranded. On board USS Firebolt, Bruckenthal watched that night as the naval bombardment of Iraq began. With shells and rockets flying overhead, lighting up the dark sky, the next morning they reached the tugs and conducted a boarding. Bruckenthal stood guard over the cruise while Australian Royal Marines, U.S. Naval Explosive Ordnance Disposal, and Coast Guard personnel swept the vessel. While the crew didn't resist, Bruckenthal noted that they appeared very nervous. The reason soon became clear. They found a cache of automatic weapons hidden on a barge attached to the tugs, along with around 60 sea mines. It had become clear that these weren't simple sailors, but Iraq military personnel who were transporting these weapons to safety for future use. The Coast Guardsmen transferred the prisoners to another vessel and retreated from the barge, leaving Navy explosive experts experts to handle the mines. After performing many escorts to and from the port of Qasr, the fireboat returned to Bahrain for refitting and more training. In March 2004, at the request of his command staff, Bruckenthal soon re-entered the fight, and he volunteered for a second deployment to Iraq and was placed on the training team for Leadet 403. On April 24, 2004, DC-3 Bruckenthal was doing patrols near the Khawar El-Mara oil terminal just south of Iraq. His task that day was to train U.S. Navy personnel in proper boarding procedures when operating off a rigid hull inflatable boat. They were securing a perimeter around the oil terminal, which they knew would likely be a target for attacks. Initially, 10 dhows, local fishing vessels approached, but were turned away by the presence of the U.S. Navy. As they continued their patrol, Bruckenthal noticed one small dhow which hadn't heeded the initial warning. The lone ship was still headed towards the terminal, ignoring all orders and threats. Bruckenthal had his RHIB pull up alongside the dhow when all heck broke loose. The Iraqis on board must have realized that the game was up. They were about to be boarded and arrested. In their terrified state, they detonated the explosive held in their cargo hold. The massive blast destroyed the dhow, sent a wave of shrapnel towards the RHIB. Bruckenthal was closest to the ship and took the brunt of the debris. It also flipped the boat over by the blast, throwing its crew into the water. The other naval forces in the area immediately responded to the blast, putting both the oil terminals on high alert. Thanks to the early warning, the terminals were able to open fire on 2 other dhows laden with explosives just in time. While both detonated their bombs, they did minimal damage, resulting only in the loss of 3 to 4 days of oil production rather than the destruction of the entire terminals. Only weeks after discovering that his wife was carrying his unborn child, Damage Controlman 3rd Class Nathan B. Bruckenthal and 2 U.S. Navy sailors died of their wounds later that day. Nathan B. Bruckenthal, United States Coast Guard Petty Officer, lost his life while serving his country. He was the first Coast Guardsman to be killed in action since the Vietnam War. He was 24 years old. For his bravery and sacrifice of self, Nathan was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart Medal, the Bronze Star Medal with Valor, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal with Oak Leaf, and his 2nd Combat Action Ribbon. He was laid to rest with many of America's best at Arlington National Cemetery. He is survived by his wife and his daughter, who was born after his passing. Nathan Bruckenthal will always be remembered for his kindness to others, sense of humor, devotion to his family, service to his country. Nathan's daughter, Harper Natalie, was born on November 19, 2004. Patty and Harper moved to Ashburn, Virginia. Patty attended and graduated from George Mason's University School of Nursing. It was her desire to serve in the military or Veterans Hospital. In a small way, she can give back to all those who've helped her and Harper. Nate has been remembered in many ways. The barracks at Station Montauk, where he first served, have been renamed Bruckenthal Hall. Nate's Open Door Baby Pantry in Exchange is a not-for-profit baby pantry that assists military and civilian employees who work in the greater Baltimore area. Tacklet South has permanently placed a plaque bearing his likeness to their facility. His brother spearheaded a community service project while serving in their local junior fire department, and an Operational Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom monument honoring those who served now stands in Northport. It too bears his likeness. His story has been published in Faces of Freedom. 3 coins have been minted acknowledging his sacrifice. The Crescent City, California U.S. Naval Sea Cadet Corps has honored Nate by naming its division after him. In January 2009, the Surface Navy Association added Nate's name to their Hall of Fame. On October 29, 2010, a new fitness center was dedicated to Nate at the Base Support Unit at San Pedro, California. And a service dog has been named after Nate. On April 24, 2014, the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Robert Papp, announced the 28th 153-foot Sentinel-class cutter would be named after Bruckenthal. The Coast Guard commissioned the fast response cutter, U.S. Coast Guard cutter Nathan Bruckenthal in Alexandria, Virginia, in honor of him. These are just a few of the testaments to Nate. But his greatest legacy is his daughter Harper. They are so fortunate to have a little piece of Nate within her. When Nate first died, a fund was established to ensure Patty and Harper would be cared for and then they both could be granted a higher education. Because of the generosity of so many, the fund has been able to assist worthy causes in Nate's name with some of its resources, including the Coast Guard Foundation, the Wounded Warrior Project, Center for the Intrepid at Brooke Army Medical Center, Nate's Open Door, and Veterans Moving Forward, just to name a few. I leave you with a poem by the British Victorian poet Alfred Lord Tennyson. The poem, written in 1889, is a metaphorical meditation on death, which sees a sailor comparing dying, or a certain way of dying, to gently crossing the sandbar between a coastal area and the wider sea of ocean. In essence, it is a poem that argues that death is in fact a kind of comfort, a point of view based on the religious faith in the afterlife. Accordingly, the sailor wants to die quietly and gently, without fear, reassured by the knowledge that what comes next is a meeting with God. It's called Crossing the Bar. Sunset and evening star and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight, then evening bell, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place, the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. I thank you so much for allowing me to share this story, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Terry. Now let us enjoy the Armed Forces Medley and the New London High School Band. Thank you so much for the New London High School Band. And now Don Schmall will be presenting the Gold Star families and bells honoring the fallen.
I'd like to begin with a little note about the Gold Star family. Gold Star families are immediate relatives of U.S. Armed Forces members who died in battle or in support of certain military operations. The term Gold Star family comes from the service flag, which was first flown for the families during World War I. The flag includes blue star for every immediate family member serving in the armed forces of the United States. If that loved one died, the blue star was replaced with a gold star. The gold star was started for the wives and the mothers who lost their husband or sons. Sometime after World War II, this was changed to the term Gold Star families. So at this time, any Gold Star family members present? One. Thank you. Blue Star family members are the family members with relatives currently serving in the armed forces of the U.S. Do we have any Blue Star family members? Yep, a few. We thank you for their service. At this time, I'll read the past veterans that passed away this past year. Mr. Bill Crow will be doing the bell tone. First, I'd like to say, if I mispronounce any names, I apologize for that. Second, if you feel a name should be on this list, see me after the program and it'll be added on for the following year. I begin with Joseph Amador, Joseph Barnes, David Bowman, John Kevinet, Robert Fingers, Ronald Gagno. He was our post commander, also the county commander at this time before his passing. He performed many honors at the cemeteries in honor of the fallen vets. Helped at Camp American Legion. Norbert Gazin, Donald Haves, Arthur Hendrich, Roland Hermes, James Hilliker, Stephen House, Roger Knapp was a member of our Post 263. He became ill a number of years ago and spent the past few years at King. John Knutson, Emil Colby, Gerald Leonard, Raymond Mellett, Thomas Matheson, Ronald Meek, Mark Milton, Dennis Moeller, another American Legion member and past post commander, Nicholas Patoka, Robert Poppy, longtime member of American Legion here in town, Randy Roloff, Donald Schutnick, Kelly Schiltke, John Schwarzwald, Roland Toos, Charles Thompson, James Thompson, James Wilkin, David Wozinski. David Wozinski, can't say him much. Member of our AMVETS, our American Legion. He probably did over 100 veteran ceremonies throughout his life. He was always here at the cemetery putting out flags. And then he also did at work at Camp American Legion. I thank you. But before I leave, I leave you with one note. I leave you with one last note. When someone refers today as a holiday, correct them and let that person know, or persons, that today is Remembrance Day or a day of observance for the sacrifice of the men and women that gave their life for this nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill and Don. And now, New London High School Band will perform Amazing Grace. Thank you for that. And that was the MVets 45 and the New London High School Buglers, Paul Bushin and Onan Retzloff. Thank you. And now we will have the group commanders placing the veteran group wreaths. And now, the New London High School Band will perform America the Beautiful. Thank you. On Memorial Day, we take time to reflect on and reminisce about the stories and experiences of our fallen heroes. Let those memories give us the strength and courage to take action tomorrow and each day going forward. Let their sacrifices guide our actions. Let our actions honor their memories. When we are intentional with our words and actions and strive to set a good example, just think of the impact those words and actions will have on the people you encounter. As we celebrate this somber holiday, let us never forget that freedom is not free. And now Pastor Steve Savides will lead us in the closing prayer.
As we leave this place and close the ceremony, we hold in our hearts places like Wood National Cemetery in Milwaukee and Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C., and all around our nation, where those who died in service are also honored. Hear these words from a wonderful poem by Stephen Spender. Near the snow, near the sun, in the highest fields, see how these names are fetid by the waving grass and by the streamers of white cloud and whispers of wind in the listening sky, the names of those who in their lives fought for life, who wore at their heart the fire's center. Born of the sun, they traveled a short while toward the sun and left the vivid air signed with their honor. Let us pray. O God, as we leave this place, let us be mindful of those who have laid down their lives in the service of their country. We ask your strength that we might honor their sacrifice by rededicating ourselves to your peace and justice among the nations. This we ask and pray in your name. Amen.
And now, the New London High School Band will perform God Bless America. In closing today, I just want to thank everybody who has had such a big hand in today's events. Band director Alex Rambo and the amazing New London High School Band, thank you so much. The American Legion Riders who have done so much for the event and do so much for the organization, thank you to them. Pastor Steve Savides, thank you so much for being here and making such a difference. The New London Boy Scouts, thank you for all that you do. Thank you. And we can't forget the New London High School Buglers, who did an amazing job. And to Tim Roberts, who is always such an integral part of this event, thank you. And thank you all for being here today and celebrating this very somber day with us and being a very big part of it. And we also want to thank the Traumatic Brain Injury Fight for Team Life, who arranged for the floral arrangements and donated those, so thank you to them. And we hope that you will all join us for a luncheon presented by the American Legion Auxiliary Unit 263 at the American Legion Post. Thank you, everybody.